Hello and welcome to Freedom Watch. I'm Judge Andrew Napolitano here defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. The concept of blowback was a term invented by our CIA as a way to describe the consequences of American imperialism overseas coming back to haunt us. With the war on terror spreading across Middle East countries into Pakistan, the U.S. has been using Predator drone attacks to wipe out suspected terrorists in the name of fighting for our freedoms. It is because of these attacks that Faisal Shahad, the attempted Times Square bomber, attempted to seek vengeance for the killing of Taliban leader Batela Massoud. The concept of blowback is nothing new to those who study foreign policy, as the United States has been reaping what it sows for years. With the 1953 coup of Iranian President Mohammad Mossadegh, which led to the 1979 Islamic Revolution, and the subsequent kidnapping of American hostages, which dragged out for over a year. Unfortunately for the citizens of both countries, it is the people who most suffer the blowback for the folly of their leaders, as the Times Square bombing demonstrates. Here in New York, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, not content in installing surveillance cameras every 200 feet in the city, has declared that he will now create a, quote, ring of steel in Midtown Manhattan in an attempt to ward off more crime. The question hanging in the air is, if we had tens of thousands of cameras already working on every street corner, why didn't they stop the bomber from his attempt in the first place? And if we think cameras are a way to stop bad people, why don't we put cameras inside every home in order to protect children against child abuse? When will this Orwellian madness end? Joining me now is Walter Williams, professor of economics from George Mason University. Professor Williams, welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Well, thank you very much, Judge.
This event in Times Square happened just a couple of blocks from where I'm seated now. There were about 14 cameras aimed on the street corner where the car was parked. It did not stop the monster from his dastardly deed. So what was accomplished by the surveillance state in that part of New York City?
Well, we're really looking at 1984. That is, it doesn't do any good. It doesn't really stop them, but they're going to want more of it. That is, they want more of the thing that does not work. And I think that it'll stop when Americans start rejecting this stuff. Matter of fact, I'm not suggesting anybody do this. I'm surprised that back in Texas some years ago, people were shooting out cameras. I'm not suggesting that people do that, but I'm saying that people need to say, look, the government's going too far.
Well, there's no question that the government's going too far. This morning, my Fox News colleagues discovered in interviewing the former commissioner of police of Los Angeles, they didn't tell us this in New York, that many of these cameras that are within 50 or 60 yards from where I'm now seated are not only cameras, but microphones. Therefore, if tuned in to the right frequency, if aimed in the right direction, they can not only observe you on a street corner, they can hear your private conversations to a person with whom you're speaking. Now, we all know that the First Amendment requires breathing room. We all know that people don't want to live in a straitjacket. So why are we letting the government straitjacket us here in the middle of New York City?
It's very instructive, Judge, that organizations on the left, like the ACLU, the people who are so concerned about constitutional rights in Arizona, they're not saying anything about the kind of government brutality or the government confiscation of our rights in New York and other places where they're engaging in constant surveillance of law-abiding people.
You know, I don't think that these cameras stop crime at all. London, for example, has had these cameras for years. We all know the tragedy of the London subway bombing. This guy was willing to risk his own life by going in front of an area where he knew that cameras were on Broadway and 45th Street. They may make it a little bit easier for the police to do their work, but at the price of, do we really want to live with Big Brother watching all the time? Because if Big Brother's job is made easier by watching us in the streets, the argument will go, then perhaps Big Brother ought to be able to watch us elsewhere.
That's right. And as you suggested in your opening remarks, we're not far from the day that the big brother will be saying, we want cameras in your home. We want cameras in your hallways. We want cameras in schools to observe kids. We want cameras everywhere. And I think that is a gross violation of our individual rights. And it's government snooping and not doing what it's supposed to do, but snooping in areas that it's not supposed to be involved at all.
I have often argued, and I think you've heard me say this, that after the right to life, the greatest right is the right to be left alone. And we have embodied that right to be left alone in the Fourth Amendment. If the government wants something about us, it has to go to a judge and demonstrate probable cause of criminality before the government can get it. But if we allow our fellow Americans to become accepting of cameras on every street corner, if we permit the right to privacy simply to fade away, we may very well elect a government that assumes the right to put these cameras inside our homes and makes an argument like I made in the opening. Well, there are children there, and we have to make sure that the children go to bed at the right time of day, get up at the right time of day, don't have too much sugar, don't have too much salt, aren't spoken to in a harsh way. I can actually hear that argument being made by bureaucrats and their defenders when they want to put cameras in our homes.
That is absolutely right. And matter of fact, you know what they would say to you, Judge? They say, oh, nobody would ever do anything like that. We would not go that far. But keep in mind, I do not know any point in history where a tyrant went to bed one night and said, and woke up the next morning and said, I'm tired of tyrannizing people. I'm going to let people be free. There's no examples of that in history at all. And a good example of that is the anti-tobacco movement. It started out back in the 60s, people only wanted no smoking sections on airplanes. And when they got that no smoking on airplanes altogether and in airports and on the streets, and we have what we have now. Now, that no smoking, when we told government that they can come in and have no smoking regulations in the name of health, well, we let them in the name of salt. Now they're going after salt. There's the Santa Clara Board of Supervisors have made a law banning toys in Happy Meals because the Happy Meal has too much fat and salt in it. You have to wonder, when will Americans get up and say, hell no, we're not going to take it anymore?
You're right. Listen, I'm against too much salt. I'm against too much sugar. I'm against smoking. But what business is it of the government if people want to get together and smoke in a bar where the owner of the bar says this is a smoking bar? What business is it of the government what we put in our bodies? What argument would you make? I hear this all the time with respect to privacy. I have nothing to hide. I don't care if the government is watching. When people say that to me, I say I have plenty to hide. It's called my personal dignity, and I won't surrender it to the people in the government.
That's absolutely right. And I would ask people, a person who said that, oh, if you're not doing anything wrong, why do you care if government is watching? Well, I would ask them, would they like to have a camera in their bedroom and have people watch them making love?
Wow. You know, the government works for us. What kind of employees get to watch the employers? It would be more likely and more rational if we watched the government when it compromises away our liberty or when it steals our property, rather than the government watching us when we exercise freedom that the government has sworn to uphold. Professor Williams, go ahead, sir.
The American people have lost the spirit of our founders. If you look at the Constitution of the United States, it shows the founders had great distrust for Congress. Congress shall not prohibit. Congress shall not infringe. Congress shall not disparage. The founders did not trust the Congress, but however, we American people, we trust the Congress too much.
Professor Williams, it's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you.
From New York, defending freedom. Until the next time, stay free, America.